I'm joined here by Akela Lacey, my colleague over at The Intercept. We're going to talk about two recent pieces that she's done, one on the push for police reform in Congress, and the other to try to end what is widely considered to be a scam that ought to be illegal. This is what's known as surprise billing. This is when you go to a hospital, you go to a doctor's office, you expect to get a certain bill, you get surprised by a different bill. You know, there's almost a cliche out there that says, God, there ought to be a law. Well, in this case, there ought to be a law. And so for several years now, Congress has been trying to write this law. Akela Lacey has been covering the effort to do this. And it is one of the most kind of heartbreaking and hysterical efforts on the part of Congress, because it's like, wait, you can't even end something that is so obviously, ridiculously ought to be illegal as getting a bill that is higher than what you expected to pay when you went to the hospital. So, Akela, tell us a little bit about what surprise billing is and how Richie Neal, the Ways and Means Committee chairman, who TYT viewers know as the guy who won re-election thanks to the homophobic smear against Alex Morse, is.
So surprise billing is when you go to, the ER or hospital, or you're treated somewhere that you think is in network, and a physician attends to you that ends up being out of network, and then you get home and you get a bill for, a couple $100s that you never expected, and you have no recourse, basically. And the issue.
Right. So so the hospital is in network, but then the doctor is somehow out of network.
Right.
Like
and there's no way for you to check that, or, even if you check ahead of time to make sure that the hospital you're going to is in network, like there's no way for you to know. They're not going to tell you when the doctor comes into your room, like, do you want to make sure that you want this treatment? And the issue with COVID, this is exacerbated with the coronavirus pandemic, because a lot of insurance companies told their clients that even if they went to an emergency room and this happened, that any treatment related to COVID would be covered. And we're seeing that obviously wasn't the case for a lot of people. But this is one of the things that is probably the most financially burdensome on people, and that could be done away with, easily, if we didn't have people in Congress who were more concerned about, protecting the interests of private equity groups that have been profiting off of this, and that created the issue of surprise billing to allow them to profit off of hospitals and healthcare providers that they've absorbed.
Right. Yeah. So, and this touches on something we've talked a lot about here, which is consolidation and the financialization of American life. So like what you're saying is all of these private equity groups, Blackstone as the leading one, has gone out and they've bought up a whole bunch of these doctor networks. Doctors, rather than having their own private practices, had banded together in these networks, and then Blackstone, this private equity group, goes and buys them up and then figures out, okay, these ones are out of network, these ones are in network. Let's have our McKinsey, MIT type folks, figure out the most sophisticated way that we can sneak the most amount of out of network doctors into the in network situation. So these private equity executives are big donors to Democrats. Donald Trump had campaigned on lowering drug prices, lowering healthcare prices, and made an effort to crack down on this. The Democrats had said they were going to do this as well. How can you have both parties saying that they're going to do something? There's only two parties that get elected to office, as far as I know, unless you know of another one, other than, I guess, Bernie Sanders and the Independent. So both parties are for this. What happened? Why hadn't this happened until this weekend?
So, Wendell Primus, Nancy Pelosi's top policy advisor on health, told people that he was going to take a plan to McConnell. I think it was last weekend, and there was an understanding that plan was going to look a little bit more like the energy and commerce version of the surprise billing provision that would have not, been favorable for private equity for providers, which and this fight doesn't fall along, clean political lines. We're talking a lot about, what would benefit insurers versus what would benefit providers, and private equity is actually on the side of providers and and hospitals in this case. But basically, everyone, no one was happy with whatever proposal they thought that Primus was going to bring to McConnell. Richie Neal already had, a chip on his shoulder on this issue. He had shut down a bill to address surprise billing last year that, had broad bipartisan support, and somehow, as we reported, has finagled his way into having jurisdiction over an issue that the Ways and Means Committee really doesn't have jurisdiction over. But the idea that his corporate donors would be very upset if Congress were to act on this as swiftly as they were poised to, gives him a little bit more leverage over the leadership in the House that would have allowed him to, single-handedly derail, as we saw last week. They were close to trying to get this into the relief package, and Richie Neal put up a fight because he didn't like the version that they were moving towards. There seems to be some movement. ENC put out they've agreed on a different version, and it's unclear whether the window has passed for that to actually make it into a relief package. But obviously they're responding to how bad it looks that there's one guy, throwing a tantrum in the middle of the House and stopping this from happening.
Yeah, it's kind of a fascinating story about the way that politics actually affects people's lives, like in a real way, and in the way that it kind of legalizes thievery. So people say that if you're on Wall Street and you like the beach, you've got a lot of different places to go. You like the mountains, you go to the Berkshires. This picturesque place out in western Massachusetts, mountains as far as the eye can see. It's kind of a post-industrial wasteland if you live there. But if you just vacation there, quite lovely. Who represents that area? Richie Neal. So the man who represents the vacation homes of the private equity executives winds up being in a place where he can protect a business model that was basically to go around, buy up as many doctor and hospital providers as they can, and then kind of just trick people into having to pay a little extra money. And so what I found fascinating was the solution that Congress has so far come up with. I don't think they're done with this. I think they might want to say, hey, we solved surprise billing, so we're done with this, we're moving on. But like as the situation exists currently, you've got the providers and, like you said, the private equity people on one side, and then you have patients and insurance companies on the other side, and they're fighting. And so as the private equity people win, then the patients and the insurers have to pay more money. And so what Congress did is they came in and they said, okay, we're going to reform this. From now on, patients are going to be capped at what they have to pay. Insurers, you fight it out with the private equity people. Like this is between our name's Paul. This is between y'all. And what's fascinating to me about this is that we're so cynical. We think about the insurers and the private equity companies as really running Congress. But when it came down to it, it's are patients going to benefit here, or are insurers going to benefit in this terrible short-term compromise that they're coming up with? It's actually the insurers that got screwed and the patients that got taken care of in a way. Now, everybody is going to pay higher premiums because that's what insurers do. They're not going to say, oh, well, that's too bad. I guess we're going to have lower bonuses and lower salaries and lower dividends for our shareholders this year so that we can take care of our patients. No, of course not. They're going to spread the pain out among the patients. But when it came to who was going to suffer immediately in the legislation, they stuck it to the insurers rather than the patients. What do you make of that odd political economy that seems to be flowing through this Congress right now?
Well, I mean, insurers they were not getting the short end of the stick a couple months ago when we were talking about these relief packages, and now we're seeing that obviously, I don't think this is a result of patient advocates, getting exactly what they wanted. I think it's more a reflection of the stranglehold that these corporate industries have over Congress, and the fact that they would rather, stick it to the insurance industry, which is pretty close to Wendell Primus, and who, was they were throwing fits over the original version of the bill that was being discussed. And so I think it's more telling that, people are less afraid of pissing off the insurance industry than they are pissing off private equity, which I don't know where that exactly leaves us. But right. Yeah, I think, nobody's happy exactly with the mediation is like also a very bureaucratic and expensive process. And so I don't think anyone was really happy with that. But the idea is that, the Biden administration doesn't want to have to deal with this, after he comes into office. They'd much rather have Democrats, finish it now. But I think that's also, be part of the reason for that is that he doesn't want to have to go up against these industries either.
Right. And so while I've got you here, you also had an interesting piece recently that talked about the defund the police backlash that's going on. And so not only, it turns out, are Democrats kind of, establishment Democrats able to escape responsibility for whatever culpability responsibility they have for the underperformance that they suffered on election day by blaming defund the police. You have a piece out that says that, in fact, it's actually having real world implications too, and that legislation that passed the House of Representatives earlier this year now is facing a tougher road because of the way that the rhetoric is unfolding around police reform. What's going on there?
Right. So Democrats passed the Justice and Policing Act this summer in response to protests, which has a myriad of different ways that, kind of piecemeal, efforts to reform the police. But Democrats are backing away from it right now like it's the plague. We heard the infamous, caucus call a few days after the election, but we got some reporting on some remarks that were made during that call where people were, Bill Pascrell was saying that he had been made to walk the plank on qualified immunity. We saw another Democrat.
Right, this is a moderate Democrat who complaining that he had to vote for it.
Who, by the way, was like the top recipient of police money in Congress last session, and swiftly lost the endorsement of the biggest police union in New Jersey after he voted for the Justice and Policing Act, which would have ended qualified immunity for federal and local officials. But the funny thing is that this is an issue that actually has broad bipartisan support. You have, the Koch Pact Americans for Prosperity, you have the Cato Institute, you have Clarence Thomas, you have Tom Brady, and then you have all these progressive groups on the other side saying, like, yeah, we all are in agreement that we think that this it's not even a statute. It's a legally created doctrine that has been formed, over decades through case law. It doesn't exist anywhere in the law, but it affords this wide latitude that literally no other profession in the country has. We're talking about, being able to avoid civil suits, in almost any capacity if you're a police officer. So, and one interesting thing that came out in this piece is that Republican Senator Mike Ron from Indiana, who I think until a few hours ago hadn't even acknowledged that Joe Biden won the election, was someone who wanted to reform qualified immunity before Democrats started blaming defund the police. He went on Tucker Carlson to talk about his bill and got, a bunch of pushback from police unions and ended up backing off of it, and, is now blaming Democrats for, not stymieing any sort of progress on police reform. But so this is, the qualified immunity stuff is a little bit quieter. I think Democrats plan to reintroduce this measure next session, but I think the issue of policing, like the party has made the issue of policing more toxic than it needs to be, to the point where they're having people, back off of things that they were voting for, enthusiastically in June. Whether that was because they were responding, to immediate pressure from protests is one thing, but it stands to, to ask, what was the impetus for people getting behind this? What did they think they were getting themselves into? Also, some of the people that are the most vocal against, against this idea of defund the police were people who voted against the HEROES Act and didn't run ads mentioning, jobs within the last 6 weeks of the election, and did a lot of other things that I think are probably, worth looking at when we're talking about, why they didn't perform as well as they wanted to in November.
Well, it took 4 or 5 years in the 1960s for the backlash to, fully push Democrats away from civil rights. Then they did it this time in 4 or 5 months. Great work, Democrats. Michaela Lacey, thank you so much for joining us. Great reporting. Looking forward to talking to you again soon.
Thanks for having me.
Probably tomorrow.
Yes, I will see you tomorrow.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.